Howdy folks, we're going to take you through a series of videos trying to make a pouch that holds .375 round balls, but instead of just this poke style where you cinch it up, because I'm having a tough time and these holes are plenty big enough. It's just the leather's so grippy when your hands are cold, which half the time when I'm shooting lately it's 10 degrees. It's hard to get your round balls out of this poke. So what I'm going to do, I made this recently, experimenting with this style of stuff. This is like a 18th century style shot pouch for bird shot. So that's what I got in here. As you can see, that's what that is. So what I want to do is make one with a 1/2 inch hole, which this one already is. So I could just dump the bird shot out and use it, but I kind of want this one for bird shot. I even made a wooden measure. So anyway, we're going to take you through the process to make one of those. I'll show you some clips of a few things making this. So tools you need a drill. You need a 1/2 inch Forstner bit, because these come out to 3/8 of an inch, so you need something bigger than that. What I'm using, I used a rasp to round off the edges. I'll show you a clip of that. And I got a round file that I used to widen the mouth just a little bit, so your 1/2 inch dowel rod fits in there pretty snug, but will go in and out easy because the mouth's a little wider. So that's what's going to be for the cap. Let's see. So we need the file. This is a necessity. This isn't necessarily a necessity. You could use any random piece of sandpaper. I do have a belt sander which would do a better job and make this a lot faster, but almost everybody either has or can't afford a rasp. Not everybody has a belt sander, so I did it all by hand. Then I'll have to show you how to make the pattern for the leather, but we'll start with this part because you have to have this before you can make the pattern. So we'll be going through a series of videos on how to make those, all edited into one video. I don't know how long it'll be yet because I'm not done with it, but that's the start. And just to prove that my theory should work in practice, I'm going to wrap my bag around that. They're falling out. It's not, they don't come out perfect. I'm sure it'll be better when I have a less floppy bag, but I think it'll work. We'll find out together. I realized I forgot to mention some things. You're also going to need some kind of a saw. Coping saw works the best with a wood blade. You want a vise, or you're going to end up cutting your finger or something. So you want a vise to chalk up your piece of wood in, and you want to use hardwood. I think this is oak. Not positive. It's just a piece of scrap my dad had. But you want like a 1x, and you want it to be bigger. So use a block of wood, drill your hole, and cut around the hole. If you cut this first and try to drill that hole with just a hand drill, I've found that you end up cracking it a lot of times, and it may take you more than one try, but once you get that hole in, then cut around the sides. So I mentioned coping saw, vise, because you won't want to be, that's dangerous. I think that's it for now. So, and then we'll catch you in the next one.
Very good.
So I cut down my dowel rod, piece of sandpaper, and just round it off both ends. And then the side that goes in, I sand that down just a little and get just a little tiny bit of a taper. And that way it is snug, but it also comes out pretty good. Now remember, I said your little round file is going to be a necessity. That's because we got to make this groove here for tying your string for attaching the plug to the rest of it. So this would be easier in a vise, but I don't have a good way to film that at the moment. So what you're going to do, you'll be making a notch, and you're just going to keep turning that dowel till you get a good deep notch all the way around. I'd suggest doing a shallow one till you get your 360. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is supposed to look kind of rustic. So we're just going to work that around until we get a notch that's deep enough to suit us. Probably do a little more to that, but now I'm going to make a notch. Really, you could just make a notch in the corners for your string to attach to this. But I'll probably make a shallow one all the way around, but make a deep notch in your corners and a shallow one where your wood is not as thick. And that'll be plenty to retain your string to hold your plug in place. So yeah, I'm going to finish that up on a vise because it's pretty hard just holding it with your hand. I mean, you won't have to have a vise. You could use a C-clamp. You need something to hold these down while you're cutting and filing. So I made my notch for my string, and I just put a couple more notches, and that's so the leather has something to kind of grab onto. I don't know if it'll help or not, but it seems like it would. We'll be using glue to glue that together, but just something for the glue to kind of build up in. And I got that all roughed out and everything. Just gotta sand the roughness out of it a little, which I already did on this. The next thing I'm gonna do before I make the pattern, this is walnut hull die. Put them in there, and I'm gonna let that sit and soak for a few hours and then let it dry. And then what I've been doing is just putting it with a light coat of neat's foot oil. Seems to work really well. So next up we'll be working on the pattern for the leather. Okay, so I let that sit and soak for a couple hours in the walnut dye. Let it dry while I was at work. And then when I got home, I put neat's foot oil on it, just a light coating off of a rag. Let that dry. Now after I dyed it, the wood shrunk, or just because it had dye on it, made it a little tighter, so I had to take my sandpaper and just run this in there for a little bit, nothing too crazy. Whoops. So now it fits snug. Takes a little force to get it out, but you can get it out, so that's where you want it. Now we got to make our pattern. So what I'm going to do, I'll set that in there about where I want it. This is just a piece of pallet sheeting. It's basic cardboard. You could use construction paper or something like that. And what you're going to want to do is get that in there like that. You're going to want to leave a little bit of room for your stitch line. So I'm going to just push that down. And I'm going to make a mark right here. I'm going to fold that again. I'm just going to take a scissors. I'm going to cut. Around. So that's kind of what I ended up with. Looks really weird, but when you fold it together and then get this in there, makes a pretty nice looking little pouch. There's a pattern from another one I did. I don't know which pattern I'll use here. I guess whichever one fits my piece of scrap, assuming this will work. That one's a little small, so I might have to modify my pattern. We'll see. This is a piece of chrome tan water buffalo. It's probably 4 to 5 ounce. Got it from Springfield. It's a I'm gonna have to make a different pattern, but that's how I make the pattern. That's really what you need to know about it. But I'm gonna make another pattern off camera, and then we'll go to getting it on the leather. And so I used that same basic idea, and I took it from that, which was a little too wide for my piece of leather. Otherwise it'd be fine. And then I narrowed it down, so that's going to be the finished product. It's going to look something like that. I got my C.S. Osborne scratch awl here to lay this in somewhere where it works. Just enough room right there. Using an Al Stolman round knife. It doesn't work real good with vegetable tan as far as trying to cut thicker stuff, but you can score a line with it that gives you a deep enough groove to get a utility knife in there and cut it the rest of the way. So it still works good for that, but where it usually shines the best is with chrome tan cowhide that's about this thick or a little thicker. The water buffalo like this is pretty stretchy stuff. It's pretty forgiving that way. If you cut something a little too small, you can work it with your hand and actually stretch it out to what you need it to be. Pretty easy. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I got it from Springfield Leather as part of a odd lot of oil tan sides. I've gotten several of those and had really good luck with them for the most part. Okay. Oops. Get this out of here so I don't cut myself. Stitch groover, I'm just going to set for a little under 1/4 inch. Just go down the side here. Now, okay, got my glue. I'm just going to put a thin line on the outside edge here. binder clips come in handy for keeping this down while you're letting the glue dry. Okay, so this Fibings Leathercraft cement, it doesn't take very long at all to dry. So I'll just leave that sit for about 5-10 minutes, and then we can hammer out a stitch line and stitch it together. Okay, so I already got my stitch line chiseled out. I just used this 2-prong flat chisel. Got these off of Amazon. I don't remember the brand, but they seem to be pretty sturdy, and I've been using them for quite a while, and I like it's a, I want to say 1/4 inch spacing, so, or no, 4 millimeter, so probably slightly under 1/4 inch, but seem to be working really good, and they were pretty cheap. So I got my 2 John James harness needles here, a piece of wax thread. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 stitch holes from the end. This would be like the mouth where the wood part's going to be. I'm going to go back towards the front end with 1 needle. I'm going to put the other needle in the same hole, make my X, pull that tight. I'm going to grab this so I don't pull it out of my pony. I'm just going to snug them up. And I'm going to continue to keep putting them both through the same hole, make an X, pull it through to my last hole. I'm going to reverse and go back the other way. It's called a saddler stitch if you haven't done this before. And the thread, you just put it through the needle and leave a tail. You don't need to tie any fancy knots or anything. You can spear the end of your thread and lock it in if you want to, but I always pull out about arm's length of thread, unless it's a little project like this. Then I don't do quite that much, but I like to do quite a bit more than what the project actually calls for. I'd rather waste a little thread than have to splice. Like if you're lacing the perimeter of a gun belt or something, old western gun belt, you're going to have to splice at least 2 or 3 times, just because by the time you pull 12 feet of thread through, there ain't going to be much left of your thread, and you're going to be awful tired pulling that much through. So you want it to be manageable, but you don't want it to be too little when you have a project that you should be able to do all with 1 piece of thread. So just have a bunch of extras hanging off, and then you can adjust your needle as you go when you end up with too short a tail and it's inside your project. I made this stitching pony out of scraps. But if you didn't have a stitching pony, you can still do a project like this pretty fast. If you still a saddler stitch, but instead of putting them both in and making an X, you start 1 needle, pull it tight. You're going to want to have your finger and thumb like that, so you pull it away from the direction you're going, and you go through that hole, and you just Pony Expressing your needles, grabbing a different needle every time. So you'll go through one that had the other needle in it, you'll start the next one, and you grab your needle, go through. So you're stitching 2 holes every time you grab the other needle. You can clip right along. Doesn't take that long at all. Okay, now that I'm to the end, I'm going to go back 3 holes. 2, 3. Okay, now there's all kinds of ways to end your thread. Some people will bring it up through one ply and out the edge and then tie a knot. Some people will just cut it off as close as they can. Some will cut it off a little bit away from it and then burn the ends. I've done it all. Don't know that it really matters. I prefer to back stitch a few, then back stitch back so it's good and secure, and then I'll just end it one of the 3 ways I just mentioned. I've used them all. I don't really have a preference. It depends on the project. You got a project where your stitching is going to be on the inside, that can predict how you want to do it, but this makes a good and secure end if you can wiggle up through the 2 plies. Just go in 1 ply and then pull it up through, make a knot. That'll be down inside the leather a little bit. Cut that off. Tuck it in there. Let's move back over here. Let's see. It fits in there and it's a little bit loose even. That's okay. I'm going to use some of this Titebond Quick and Thick glue here. I don't know how well the Leathercraft cement would work for this. I'm just going to put a pretty generous amount of this up in the throat here. Try not to go too deep with it, but you don't want it quite as deep as what you're sticking this in, so you don't have a bunch of excess in there. Okay, I'm going to grab a binder clip. So it's just barely oversized. So I'm going to just take a binder clip, push this over there as far as I can get it. And we'll just let that dry. And then we can attach this part. So, okay, so my glue's dry. That's what it looks like. Now I'm going to take my awl. I'm going to come in, get it where you can see it, and where I can see it. I'm going to come in right around here somewhere, either right there or just so I'm in line with one of those stitches, and come as close to that piece of wood as I can and make a hole. I go to the second stitch. I'm going to take one needle. This is a piece of thread from before. Go in that, go back through my original stitch. I'm just going to do that twice. came unthreaded. Just going to make a knot in that for now. Now I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to loop it around that, pull that tight, and I'm going to do that again. You could fasten that any old way you want to. I'm going to take this here, tight, and go around one more time, pull that tight, and I'm just going to tie a big double granny knot here. Good and secure. Cut that off and leave a little tail. Cut this off and leave a little tail. Good and secure. Now see how it works. Alright, I got 24 in there, which is pretty good for a day on the range. You could fit more in there. All right, see how they come out. I'd say that was a success. I just dumped out 7 bullets just like that. So way easier than having to fiddle with getting this open when your fingers are cold. And then, see, it's not that hard, but definitely harder than that one. So when it's warm out, I'll probably still use this, but when it's cold out, that'll be my go-to. So obviously you could fill that with shot. You'd have to have a thicker piece of wood probably and a bigger bit to get like 44 caliber in there, probably. But it might actually still work, I don't know. But if you had like a 1860 Army, this was a .49 round ball. That actually works too, so yeah, you could use this for 44 caliber as well. So that's the end of it, and it's basically an 18th century style, I say style because it's not a completely authentic, but style shot pouch. Thanks for watching.